Hi, my name is Misa Ramirez and this is Books on the House. Today we're here with Jane Kurtz. Jane, thank you so much for being here on Books on the House for Kids and Teens.
I'm delighted to be here.
We're thrilled to have you as our inaugural author for Books on the House for Kids and Teens, and I'd love it if you would tell us a little bit about Lanie and Lanie's real adventures.
Sure. Well, I had written one other book for the American Girl Company. It was really more for teens because they were trying a series called Girls of Many Lands. They had successfully gotten so many kids interested in American history, they decided maybe they would try their hand at seeing what it was like to get kids about 12, 13, 14 years old interested in the history of girls other places in the world. So I wrote a book for them called Saba, Under the Hyena's Foot, that was set in the ancient capital of Gondar in Ethiopia. Then I was doing an author visit in Indonesia, and the editor wrote to me and asked if I would be interested in writing the books for the Doll of the Year. So I'd had a really good experience with them, and I said that I would be happy to do it.
Wow, that is very exciting. And so you've written 29 books, is that correct?
Right. Lanie's Real Adventures is my 29th book.
Wow, that is quite an accomplishment. I'm so impressed.
Although I always have to point out when kids ask me that question about how many books I've written, that I had to write a lot of books that never got published. So I've never actually counted the number of books I've written.
Well, that's
but
encouraging.
I've published 29 books.
That's encouraging for the aspiring writers out there of all ages.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what kind of books you read as a child?
Sure. I grew up in Ethiopia, where my mom and dad moved to work for the Presbyterian Church when I was just 2 years old. And just these books would appear at Christmas time and birthdays. My sisters and I, everyone would get a book, and we would just sink into our own book and love it so much, and then we would trade books with each other as soon as we'd finished our own. And I never really thought to wonder where those books had come from until pretty recently I asked my mom. I think this is a great testimony to librarians. She said that she read an article in Ladies' Home Journal, I think, that was called 100 Best Books for Children. And she was quite a reader. She loved to read. So she said, we didn't have a lot of money, but I scraped together as much money as I could, and I bought as many of those books as I could. So those were the books that were appearing at Christmas and birthdays for us. And they were some of the great books, things like Caddy Woodlawn, things like Winnie the Pooh, the original, not the little picture books, you know, and things like Black Beauty, which made me weep and weep and weep, but I couldn't help reading it over and over again. So I didn't really have a lot of children's books when I was growing up, but the ones I had were so treasured. The Middle Moffat, since the Middle Moffat was Janie and I'm Jane, and my family called me Janie. I thought that was so great. Little Women, The Little House on the Prairie, just, you know, those books that were around and were being celebrated in those days. Oh, Charlotte's Web, too.
So all
The
those
ones
that are
that
classics now.
Yes, those ones that are considered classics were what I cut my teeth on. And we did have the Pokey Little Puppy and the one about the house that gets moved into the city or the countryside, or, you know, I'm forgetting now. But anyway, some of those classic picture books we also had, and The Dog Who Belonged to Himself. So, you know, I loved all of those books, but I didn't really discover what I would call contemporary children's literature until I had kids. And then I was going to the library and checking out books, and that's when I discovered what a wonderful wealth of children's books really existed out there in the world.
Is that when you started writing?
Yes, I'd always been a writer, but I had never thought about writing for children until I was reading all of those books. And when I was reading those books and really getting to know children's books, I decided that I was in love with children's literature.
So what was your first book? Do you remember?
The first book I ever read, do you mean?
The first book that you ever wrote, whether it was published or not.
Oh, the first book I ever wrote. Well, I wrote a short story when I was in high school, And it was published in the high school newsletter, and that was very exciting to me. So that was my first publication. Of course, it was only read by my fellow students and teachers, but still, that was super exciting.
Yeah, sure.
Then when I started, and then I wrote poetry in college. So the first story I ever wrote, let's see if I can remember. I'm sure it was something having to do with my kids and their lives. I wrote a story about a little boy who leaves a stuffed animal out in the rain and is very sad, which was, of course, something that had happened. I actually probably don't remember the very first one.
So you brought up that you were raised in Ethiopia, and I've read that you have a project that you work on there. Can you tell us about Ethiopia Reads? Is that what it's called?
Sure, Ethiopia Reads. I grew up seeing especially girls not have any chance to go to school. And I grew up seeing girls and boys going to the school that my mom and dad helped with, but then not having any books to read. But I just thought my whole life that I would never have any chance to reach out with books and reading to kids in Ethiopia until I met a man named Johannes who had come here. He went to school in Texas, actually, part of his schooling, and he had gotten his library degree, and he was a librarian in San Francisco Public Library. And he was just dying to go back and try to take books to kids in Ethiopia because, as he said, books changed his life, and he never held a book till he was 19 outside of school.
Wow.
So I didn't have any idea what he would be able to do, but I started working through my church and through some of the teachers that I knew and through some of the kids, even in North Dakota where I was living, to see if we could raise money. And we raised enough money to publish the first color book for children in Ethiopia. And then Johannes ended up quitting his job and going back to Ethiopia. So we have started 43 libraries. Most of them are in schools because in Ethiopia they say 99% of the schools don't have libraries, and most of them don't even have any books at all. So most of the libraries that we're starting are in schools. But we also have donkey libraries. Those are very fun. We have 5 donkey libraries, and they are carts that are pulled by donkeys. They're pulled around to different neighborhoods and also to different schools. So it's a mobile library.
Yeah, the old mobile book van.
Sure. Yep, exactly.
Wow.
So those always capture the imagination of people, and they are very fun to see. There was an article in Good Housekeeping 2 years ago in October about Johannes, and the photographer from that magazine has allowed us to use some of his photos. So the website is ethiopiareads.org, and it's very fun to go and see the pictures of the donkey library.
Yeah, and are there ways to donate books through the website?
Actually, we have a problem with donated books just because in this country we have so many books that we have a volunteer in Kansas who gets donations of books, and she has already rented several storage rooms that are full. So our main need is money to ship those books, and money to hire the staff in Ethiopia, and money to just do all that work, that even build furniture that we have to do to plant libraries.
Okay, well that's great, and I'll make sure and post the website on Books on the House.
That would be super.
Well, good luck with Lanie and Lanie's Real Adventures. Again, I'm so excited that you're our inaugural author, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this interview.
Thanks, and I don't know how many Texas listeners you have or followers, but I will be in Dallas at the American Girl store, so if any people are in the Dallas area, they can check the schedule, or I can also give you those dates and you could post that on the website as well.
I would love that because I'm near Dallas and I have a girl who's an American Girl doll fanatic.
All right. Well, I'll be sure to let you know the dates.
Yes, I'll post them. Thank you so much, Jane.
You're so welcome. Good luck with everything you're doing.
Thank you.